I still remember the day I stumbled upon that Craigslist listing. I was desperate to leave my cramped apartment and start fresh, so when I saw an ad for a spacious one-bedroom apartment in one of the most reputable parts of town, with rent so surprisingly low that it almost seemed too good to be true, I didn't hesitate. The ad promised modern amenities and a quiet, safe neighborhood. The only oddity was that the landlord, a quiet older man, insisted on meeting in person, and offered very little background information. Despite a nagging feeling of unease, I signed the lease and moved in, convinced that I had finally found my sanctuary. My first visit to the apartment was a mixed experience. The space was immaculate, almost unnaturally so, as if every surface had been scrubbed clean to hide something. The decor was outdated, a mix of faded wallpaper and antique furniture that gave the unit a strange, timeless quality. I couldn't shake the feeling that the place was trying too hard to look perfect, almost as if it were masking a hidden history. Still, I rationalized my discomfort away, attributing it to nerves and the excitement of starting a new chapter. Over the next few weeks, subtle signs began to unsettle me. I discovered that several closets in the apartment were locked, despite my being given full access when I moved in. I'd occasionally catch a glimpse of something odd through the narrow gaps, a glimpse of a faded photograph or a scrap of paper tucked away behind loose bricks in the wall. At first, I thought these were just remnants of previous tenants, nothing more than old belongings forgotten by time. But the more I looked, the more I began to wonder if someone had deliberately concealed these items. One rainy evening, as I sat alone in my living room trying to relax with a book, I noticed an envelope slid under my door. It contained a single note, its message typed in a plain, unadorned font: "Leave now." My heart raced as I read the words, each one feeling like a personal threat. I felt exposed and vulnerable in a place I was only beginning to call home. The note was anonymous, and there was no explanation or signature. I couldn't help but question whether it was some cruel prank, yet the warning sent a chill down my spine. As days turned into weeks, I began hearing strange noises in the dead of night. Soft, deliberate knocks coming from the walls and the corridor outside my door. I would lie awake, listening as the sound of footsteps echoed through the narrow hallways of the apartment building. Neighbors later mentioned that similar disturbances had occurred in the past, with some claiming that tenants had mysteriously vanished without explanation. They spoke in hushed tones about the building's history, hinting at unsolved disappearances and odd, inexplicable events that had plagued the place for years. My growing paranoia compelled me to search the apartment more thoroughly. Late one night, armed with nothing but a flashlight, I began to pry open one of the locked closets. Behind it, hidden away in a dusty corner, I found a collection of faded photographs and a discarded diary. The photos were of a tenant I had never heard of, a young woman with a sorrowful expression, her eyes seeming to plead for help. The diary entries were even more disturbing, recounting days of isolation, paranoia, and an overwhelming fear of someone lurking just beyond the edge of her vision. The final entry ended abruptly, leaving me with more questions than answers. My pulse pounded as I realized that the diary hinted at a tenant who had vanished without explanation. Was I now living in a place haunted by its past? The evidence was mounting, and every anonymous note, every creak in the floorboards, and every shadow in the hallway seemed to point to an unsettling secret buried deep within these walls. I began to feel trapped in a reality that was slowly unraveling. Each time I turned a corner, I half expected to see a pair of cold, lifeless eyes staring back at me. The once inviting apartment had transformed into a maze of hidden spaces and dark secrets. I could no longer ignore the mounting evidence that something was deeply wrong, something that had been concealed for far too long. Even now, as I write this, my hands tremble and my heart races at the memory of those anonymous warnings and the eerie remnants of a past life. I continue to live here, caught between the desire to uncover the truth and the overwhelming fear of what I might find. The landlord's cryptic demeanor, the locked closets, the faded photographs, and that discarded diary have all combined to create a lingering dread that I can't shake. I am left with a sense of foreboding every time I walk through the door, a constant reminder that sometimes the most unsettling horrors are the ones hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. My name is Marcus, and I never imagined that a Craigslist ad could shatter the ordinary and drag you into a waking nightmare. It all began when I responded to an ad for a used car that looked too good to be true. A pristine model offered at a fraction of its market value. The listing was brief and vague, with minimal details about the seller. I arranged to meet him in a dim parking lot on the outskirts of town. The location was isolated, the only sound the distant hum of passing cars and my own hesitant footsteps on cracked pavement. Despite an uneasy feeling, I was eager to seize the deal. When I arrived, the seller, a quiet older man with tired eyes, handed me the keys without much conversation. The car was immaculate, a gleaming machine that shone even under the weak light of the overcast sky. I took it for a test drive along empty roads, marveling at how smoothly it ran and how every detail was preserved. The experience felt surreal, as if I had stumbled upon a hidden gem. I decided to buy it immediately, thinking I had outsmarted the market. Later that evening, back in my small apartment, I parked the car in my driveway and decided to give it a thorough cleaning. As I vacuumed the passenger side, my vacuum suction caught on something unusual. Puzzled, I knelt down and discovered a small, inconspicuous compartment beneath the seat. It wasn't something I had noticed during the test drive. My curiosity won over caution, and I managed to pry the compartment open with a screwdriver I kept in my garage. Inside, I found a bundle of personal documents and faded photographs. They were not my own. There were bank statements, handwritten letters, and snapshots of a young woman whose eyes carried an unmistakable look of desperation and sorrow. The discovery sent a shiver down my spine. My mind raced with questions. Who was she? What was the story behind these items? And why had they been hidden in this car? It was as if the vehicle had become a time capsule for someone else's dark secrets. In the following days, I became increasingly unsettled. I began to research the car's history, scouring public records and online forums for any mention of the previous owner. I uncovered whispers of a man involved in shady dealings, a man who had ties to a local crime ring known for laundering evidence and disappearing people who got too close to their secrets. Each new detail I discovered deepened my unease, making me feel as though I were being pulled into a dangerous undercurrent far beyond my control. The sense of dread grew gradually, infiltrating every aspect of my daily routine. I started noticing odd coincidences, late-night phone calls that ended abruptly, unfamiliar cars idling near my apartment, and fleeting glimpses of a dark figure watching me from a distance. Every time I sat in the driver's seat, I felt as if I were not alone, that the car was a silent witness to a past I had inadvertently inherited. One rainy evening, after a long and nerve-wracking day, I returned home and parked the car in a secluded lot. The rain blurred the world into a watercolor of shadows and light, and as I shut off the engine, I couldn't shake the sensation that someone was watching me. My heart pounded as I glanced over my shoulder and saw a dark silhouette quickly merge with the night. I couldn't tell if it was real or merely my imagination fueled by growing paranoia, but the chill in my bones told me it was something more. The final blow came when I received an anonymous note slipped under my door. The typed message was stark and unambiguous. "You shouldn't have taken it." Those 4 words confirmed my worst fears. It was clear now that the car was not just an attractive deal. It was an unwilling carrier of someone else's dangerous past. Every new piece of evidence, every whispered rumor about the vanished previous owner, made me question my own safety. I felt trapped, ensnared in a web of criminality I never meant to touch. Even now, I rarely drive that car. I park it in a locked garage and avoid taking long trips, always haunted by the possibility of being followed. I remain ever vigilant, burdened by the knowledge that sometimes the most appealing offers hide the darkest secrets. My life has irrevocably changed since that day, and every time I glance at the car, I'm reminded of the terrifying truth. I've become entangled in a mystery that may never be resolved. I am Marcus, and I learned the hard way that bargains can come with a price that haunts you long after the deal is done. My name is Alicia, and I always believed that college dorms and shared apartments were safe havens. But nothing could have prepared me for the nightmare that unfolded when I accepted a roommate from Craigslist. It started innocently enough. I had placed an ad to cut costs, hoping to find someone responsible. And soon enough, I was matched with Daniel, a polite, unassuming fellow. Our first meeting was calm and uneventful, and his gentle smile convinced me that I'd found a reliable person to share my apartment with. At first, Daniel's quiet demeanor was not alarming. However, over time, I began noticing small details that unsettled me. He was unusually secretive about his personal history, often deflecting questions with vague answers. I assumed he might simply be a private person. But as days passed, I started observing behaviors that stirred a growing sense of dread. Every evening, around midnight, I heard soft footsteps and the faint sound of a door being locked. Sounds that always coincided with Daniel's routine. At first, I brushed it off, attributing it to his need for privacy. But a nagging feeling told me there was more beneath the surface. One particular night, when the air was thick with a foreboding silence, I was returning from the library. The apartment was dimly lit, and as I stepped inside, I noticed that Daniel's door was slightly ajar. My curiosity got the better of me, and I quietly approached, hoping to catch a glimpse of what might be happening. I paused at the threshold and listened intently. There was a soft rustling, and then, as if the space itself was hiding secrets, I heard a faint thud coming from beneath the bed. My pulse quickened, and I felt the chill of impending danger. Unable to shake my unease, I mustered the courage to investigate further. The following day, while Daniel was out, I ventured into his room. With each step, the atmosphere grew heavier, as if the very air was saturated with secrets. I began searching for any clues that might explain his mysterious behavior. Under his bed, hidden beneath a pile of old blankets, I discovered a small trove of items that sent a shiver down my spine. A collection of old newspapers and a series of court documents. The headlines recounted unsolved violent incidents in the area, and the documents were court records linked to crimes that had rocked the local community. I was horrified. The evidence pointed to a past where Daniel had been, at the very least, tangentially involved in a series of local crimes. I couldn't help but feel that the person I had trusted to share my living space was not who he claimed to be. I reassembled the items as quietly as possible and returned to my own room, my mind reeling with questions and fear. How had I been so blind to the warning signs? What other secrets was Daniel hiding behind his calm facade? As the days passed, the apartment transformed into a realm of creeping dread. I began noticing subtle changes. The once familiar hallway now felt menacing, and shadows took on sinister shapes. Neighbors whispered about late-night sightings of a strange man, often describing him as acting oddly around the apartment building. Their accounts only deepened my suspicions. Every time I passed by his locked door, I couldn't help but feel an overwhelming urge to flee, to escape the invisible threat that had invaded my home. One sleepless night, I decided that I could no longer remain in that environment. Heart pounding and hands trembling, I packed a few essential belongings and prepared to leave. Even as I hurriedly gathered my things, I felt as if unseen eyes were watching me, waiting for the moment to strike. I left the apartment without looking back, my mind consumed by paralyzing terror and regret for having trusted a stranger. The encounter left me with an enduring sense of vulnerability, a reminder that sometimes the allure of a simple add-on, Craigslist, can lead to unforeseen horrors. Now, I share my story as a cautionary tale. I warn anyone searching for a roommate to look beyond the surface and heed the instincts that whisper when something is not right. Even now, the memory of Daniel's secretive smile and the hidden trove of documents sends shivers down my spine, a lingering echo of a nightmare I can never quite escape. I remember,